Bloom. We live in a high-stress environment right now, and it's important to be aware of how we are affected by increased stress and how we respond to it. Joining us now to discuss more is Bjorn McNagel, who is a mental health counselor with McNulty Counseling. Welcome back to Bloom.
Oh, thank you.
It's so great to have you because, you know, we're talking about stress more now because of the pandemic, but really, stress has always been around, and how we handle it is so important. It seems like it's a 24/7 mission now.
Yeah, it actually is. From the smallest to just getting ready for work sometimes to the big things like maybe a major life shift, moving, loss of a job, getting a new job. I mean, so it can be positive stressors and negative stressors. And you're right, it is kind of 24/7.
So Bjorn, how do you advise people to manage the stress? Because we talk about it a lot, but not a lot of us know how to harness that in and control it.
Right. Well, there's a lot of things we can't control in our environment. So there's environmental stress, but then there's also internal stress. Those are perceived stress, and that's the stuff with counseling we really focus on, is getting to the root of our perceived stress, because we can amp things up that aren't even there. And so there's a lot of things we can do to modify our levels of stress.
So what you're saying is we're kind of creating more stress than we're actually dealing with in our heads.
I think most people do to various degrees, but people like, let's say people who are suffering from generalized anxiety disorder, they are going to be very sensitive to stress. So it's kind of a spectrum, and you don't even need to worry about labels so much, but just we want to kind of identify where our big stressors are and then how we can dial it back in. So again, some things we can control, a lot of things we can't, but let's say we're in a bad relationship.
Okay.
I mean, that's something we can do something about.
Right.
If you're in a job that's toxic, something you can do about, maybe just talk to the boss. But oftentimes we'll need support, we'll need coping skills, but it could also be just basic stuff. We now have evidence that diet affects mood. So if you eat junk food all day, you're probably going to feel like crap.
Yeah.
And that'll affect your mood, and your stress will go up because your body is not working at an optimal level.
And I like what you just said earlier. You said, you know, you don't want to necessarily like label anything, because at the end of the day, we all seem to have something that we could put a label on that we're dealing with, whether it's, you know, anxiety, depression, maybe just, you know, seasonal blues. So I guess the first step is, you know, realizing what you're dealing with and talking to an expert, you know, finding resources that might be available to you so that you can learn coping mechanisms.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is it. So what are some of the ways to minimize the effects of stress? You mentioned diet. I'm sure you're a big believer in exercise.
Of course.
Meditation, or anything else along that realm?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I usually break it down to, you know, physical, emotional, mental. Those are kind of the big three. So yeah, you mentioned meditation, any kind of stress reducing techniques like deep breathing. This is really important. Breathing is huge. A lot of people don't know how to breathe. So, you know, we're doing shallow chest breathing instead of deep down into our belly and full. That alone gets more oxygen to our brain. So we're more relaxed.
Okay.
And that affects how we go throughout our day. But emotional stress, we need to look at the major emotional triggers. Most people, we usually suffer from three big ones: anger, shame, and anxiety. So we all know anxiety.
Right.
But anger and shame, that can play more with certain people than others. But that's where counseling is really helpful, where we go kind of deep and look at, you know, where did you learn coping strategies in childhood? And sometimes we're still using them.
Yes.
Which is not good.
No, we have to evolve.
So, we do.
100%, 100%. So you're identifying the categories, then you're helping people figure out the difference between what you can control and what you can't control. And if you just can't control it, how to cope with it.
Exactly. And seeing life as a mirror. Oftentimes we see reoccurring patterns, and that's like a cue. like this keeps coming up, or I keep responding to stressful stimulus in the same way.
Okay.
So we want to break that, or we want to look at it and then find new ways to approach it.
I love it. Thank you so much. And if you want to visit, you can go to the website, McNultyCounseling.com. Thank you so much for joining us today on Bloom. We really appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, we're going to be back with more Bloom right after this.